Bridget is a spiritual guide whose mission it is to activate the immeasurable potential within you. She believes a global healing is possible when we remember our divine callings and reconnect with our soul's purpose. Warrior Women, Bridget's collaborative book, tells the story of her survival after heart failure. In it, she reveals the moment she chose to surrender her life to her calling. Now she shares the path that decisive moment has invited her to walk. Bridget also has 2 podcasts, Passionate Pursuits, which tells the stories of individuals living activated lives. I was on one, and wasn't Deanna on one too?
Yeah.
She will be. And Click Moments and Passionate Pursuits, The Unfolding, which she co-hosts with her partner, Beth Orr, an authenticity and intuition coach and guide. On it, they share intuitively guided conversations that bring joy and fresh perspectives to listeners. So, Bridget.
All right, I'm already going to stray off of the message that I wrote for you guys because I had something come up this morning that I feel this has happened many times.
This
particular service.
This whole service was
it's been in flux from day one when we talked about it, when we were going to do a Mother's Day thing and hand out flowers and talk about mother's intuition, until today. This morning when I was recording a podcast with my partner Beth, and the message shifted again. I was woken up at 3:33 a.m. with new information to bring. So that is scribbled down here that I wrote at 3 in the morning, which it looks like. But here's what I want to share. I want to do a pretext to this talk about intuition with this. I believe that there are 2 ways that we can approach life. I believe that they are fear and love, and that is it. We're either operating out of a state of fear or we're operating out of a state of love. And if you do not know my story, I'm going to do a real quick recap. I separated. My divorce went through this week, by the way, so I'm officially divorced now. But a year ago, this all started. I came out as a 38-year-old woman, finally, started living my full authentic expression. And my children are currently with their father, and they went to a church service this morning. And I am receiving messages from my children during the church service about how uncomfortable they were and how scared they were and how they were feeling attacked. And they know I've taught them love. I've taught them acceptance, and I've taught them how to act in compassion, how to act from a state of love. But the message that they were getting from a church, now we attend a church that is very affirming and welcoming, and we come here and it's very affirming and welcoming, and we teach how to love and be compassionate and how to live from that state of love. But this church that they were in was confusing because what they were teaching was hate and fear. Hate and fear and hate and fear and hate and fear in the state of the world that we're in right now, and be afraid of everything. Be afraid of people with tattoos and people who dress differently and people who love people that you don't love, and so on and so on and so on. And you know how that goes. So I just want to give a pretext to this talk about intuition and say that intuition is our connection with divine love. That when you are flowing in an intuitive state, you know what it feels like because it feels like love. It's life-giving, it is life-breathing, it moves you forward, it progresses, it evolves, it's creative and generative. You know where that state is coming from. And if you are not feeling that, then please question the answers that you're getting and the instincts that you're feeling, because it could be coming from a place of fear. And when you're coming from a place of fear, just some hallmarks of that are that it is destructive. It feels constricting. It just brings up all of those things and activates things that you don't want to feel. It's not good. So that's my pretext to where I want to go today. And a little note, this is interesting because I had written on this page, I couldn't see, it was 3 in the morning. There was no light. But I'm scribbling anyway because I felt so, this is important, this is important. And then I looked at this page this morning, and there was a note written very clearly in the upper right-hand corner that I did not write last night. And the note says, move towards the love. Move towards the love. So Now I want to share with you where I did pick up this message, which is I went on this nice pilgrimage to Emily Dickinson's house in Amherst, Massachusetts. I absolutely adore Emily Dickinson. I love the way that she authentically lived her life. She was different. People called her out on that. She didn't care. And her poetry is absolutely spiritual. I mean, she was such a spiritual being. And I picked this poem. It's number 420. She didn't title her poems. She just wrote. This poem is number 420, and it goes like this. You'll know it as you know 'tis noon, by glory as you do the sun, by glory as you will in heaven know God the Father and the Son. By intuition, mightiest things assert themselves, and not by terms. I'm midnight, need the midnight say. I'm sunrise, need the majesty. Omnipotence had not a tongue. His lisp is lightning and the sun. His conversation with the sea. How shall you know? Consult your eye. She capitalizes the word I. And I feel that anytime she would use dashes to punctuate her poems. She would put capitals in random places. And I feel like it's purposeful. I feel like her capitalization of certain words signifies their spiritual significance, not just their physical significance. So I want to talk about this knowing. And one of the reasons by the way, I'm a language and literature nerd. I buy multiple books every single week. It's a problem that we share. But here's the ironic part. I'm a language and literature nerd because I know that language can be so insufficient when it comes to capturing the essence of this existence that we're in. And since I'm a student of the human experience, I strive as often as I can, as best I can, to approach a precise translation of the experience I'm having. And even though I'm a podcast host and an English teacher, language often falls short. So in the English language, we have this one word for the awareness or familiarity of experience, and that is to know. I also teach French. In French, there are two words for knowing. There's savoir, as in je sais que le ciel est bleu. I know the sky is blue. This is like factual observation-based, physical, tangible knowledge. And there's connaître, like je te connais, I know you. And that is familiarity, not just a familiarity with people, but familiarity with places or things or experiences. I'm familiar with this. But none of these words, knowing, savoir, connaître, none of them actually truly approaches the knowing that Emily Dickinson is speaking about. And that is the knowing of intuition. You can't observe intuition. You're not necessarily going to get familiar with it. It's a completely personal experience. You're going to feel it, but in your own unique way. And you will know it by its utter magnificence that defies words. So Dickinson writes, by intuition, mightiest things assert themselves, and not by terms. I don't know if you know this. Those of us who are in communion with spirits regularly have probably had this experience. Outside of humanity, this concept of labeling and categorizing is absurd. It is a uniquely human thing for us to want to name and to contain and to label and categorize and separate things. Our true nature, and that which the spirit world knows, is that of oneness, not separation. Therefore, language is really just another way of further dividing us from oneness. I want to know, have you ever, by a show of hands, have you ever carried on a completely wordless conversation with someone before? Then you know what I'm talking about. A stranger across a crowded airplane, you lock eyes. This flight sucks. Yes, I know. This is a friend when they're going through a time of need and words fail you. And there's nothing that you can say but just to be with them. This is intuition in action. This is the divine in me recognizes the divine in you. And we connect, and it does not require words. Intuition unites us. Intuition comes from love. It is our connection with one another, our connection with the collective, our connection with spirit. But everyone accesses and experiences intuition uniquely. I believe there are as many ways to interact with spirit as there are spiritual beings, which means there's infinitely many ways for us to connect with spirit. So interestingly, before I knew today was a special day in the Christian calendar, we had talked and planned this talk around intuition. And then just this past week, Stephen messaged me and said, did you know that it's actually Pentecost Sunday on Sunday when you're talking? And I just laughed and I said, of course, I don't believe there's any mistake in the fact that I wrote a talk about intuition for Pentecost Sunday. So I won't reread this entire passage, but in Acts, there is this recounting of the original day of Pentecost. And I just love the idea of like, we're all sitting here and then all of a sudden there's not a wind, but this sound of like a rushing wind that everyone hears. And then there appear these divided tongues. And the way that I picture this is we have electric light, like we have other sources of light besides fire. But back in biblical times, they had fire. That was their source of light. So of course, when you physically see the spiritual light in someone, it looks radiant. It looks like they're breaking open and glowing, and there's glowing coming from inside their skin. I have a picture I can show you if you're curious, that my partner captured of me. We were talking with each other, and she goes, "Don't move. I need to take a screenshot of you. Please just hold still." And then she sends it to me, and you can see from my heart center, there is like light, like blinding light just radiating. That's what I picture when I think of this day of Pentecost and these tongues of fire resting on them. I picture like their third eye or their crown chakra just like bursting open with this radiant light. And that's a hallmark of being filled with spirit. Spirit is light. Our natural state as beings of spirit is light. And so then they begin to speak. And everyone who's outside of this room hears in their own language what they're speaking of. And they're speaking of spirit. They're speaking of the glory of God. They're speaking of, oh, now we get it. Jesus left. And now we all have access to this Christ consciousness, not just Jesus. Wow. So what does this occurrence have to do with intuition? It's the pouring out of spirit on all people. Jesus said in John 16:7, "Nevertheless, I tell you the truth. It is to your advantage that I go away. For if I do not go away, the helper will not come to you. But if I depart, I will send him to you." It's a spirit. Like, you will be able to channel me when I'm gone. All of you will be able to access me. Right now, it's just me accessing my spirit. But when I'm gone, everyone will have access to that same spirit. And then I love that your Bible put these two verses together, but Joel 2:28 says, "And it shall come to pass afterward that I will pour out my spirit," don't miss this, "on all flesh." On all flesh. On all flesh. We all have access to this. We're all spiritual beings. "Your sons and your daughters shall prophesy, your old men shall dream dreams, and your young men shall see visions." Everyone included, all flesh. So those in that room on the day of Pentecost, what was happening? They were awakened to their connection with spirit. This unfettered Christ consciousness, the Spirit of God, perhaps most simply put, divine love, was poured out upon them. Jesus, as a human, was accessible only in one place and time, but Jesus in spirit offers immediate access to everyone, always. And asterisk, if Jesus is not your cup of tea or your chosen guru, that does not in any way impede your access to Christ consciousness that goes far beyond Buddha Christ consciousness, Muhammad Christ consciousness, and we could go on and on. Jesus was just one quite magnificent vessel, as are many other teachers who point us toward the infinite creator and the God within. So speaking of the God within, I think I've referenced this before. One of my favorite books is God, an Autobiography as Told to a Philosopher by Jerry L. Martin. And in it, Martin, who was previously either an atheist or agnostic, my glasses are fogging up because it's so warm up here. Good grief. Martin, who was an atheist or an agnostic, I'm not sure which, but he certainly did not have a connection with God that he would speak of. He documents his conversations with God and the words that God speaks to him. And in one exchange, God says, "The ultimate triumph over evil and incompleteness is to be in tune with the God inside you. and to express that divine love to others. This is God speaking. Hold on a second. I'm going to read this again. The ultimate triumph over evil and incompleteness, read that fear response to the world, is to be in tune with the God inside you and to express that divine love to others. And then I want to quote Valentin Tomberg. He's an Estonian Russian mystic. He talks about this spiritual path as being a journey from mysticism, the state of inspiration, to Gnosticism, the state of illumination, and finally, union with God. He calls it sacred magic that intuition affords us. He says, intuition is the goal, to become completely attuned to the will of God, where two wills, human and divine, operate as one. And the result of this perfect intuition is our acting in the world in complete union with Spirit. The saints don't need to seek union with Spirit or with God because they're already united with God. Instead of them being turned towards God in that initial state of mysticism and Gnosticism, they've now turned towards the world, and they are acting and expressing divine love to the world. Therefore, activating our intuition from moment to moment to moment is a choice we get to make. It's not forced upon us. It's not automatically given to us, but it is available to all of us. And I believe that this activation of our intuitive sense, as Stephen mentioned before, is just a matter of us remembering. This is a heart-centered way of being that takes practice. We're third dimensional beings. We kind of operate from the solar plexus center. This requires lifting up into the heart, which is not our natural state of being, but we're headed there. I believe it. That is where we're evolving. It takes practice. Even those who were present on the day of Pentecost were not permanently activated light beings from that day forward, and that's the end of the story. If we desire deeper communion with the truths of Spirit, the mightiest things to which Dickinson refers, it takes practice. It requires us not just to see with our physical senses, but to see with our spiritual senses, to consult the capital E-I of our soul, which is our intuition. The understanding we receive through our intuition bypasses intellect and reason. If you were to take a moment, those of us who are intuitive, when you get an intuitive nudge, when you sink down into your gut, when you're activated in your heart and you just know, and it's like that intuitive knowing, go, this is it. If you take a second and you ask some questions, it seems a little bit crazy. It's like, did I actually see that? Are we sure that I can trust? This is a little bit strange. I'm not really feeling like this is reasonable. This isn't super logical. It's not logic. It's not intellect. It's not reason. It just bypasses that physical mind. It's a knowing without the necessity of comprehension. So I'll leave you with this. When you choose to leave space for intuition to guide you, you will receive exactly what you need to fulfill your purpose in this world.